Thanks for tuning in to the Mission Matters podcast, where we feature successful, mission-driven leaders committed to creating a positive change in the world. Our mission with this channel is to inspire other leaders by providing industry insights, new ideas, and inspiring stories from the pros.
Well, welcome. My name is Paul Feith, host of this show where I interview business leaders heading up mission-focused organizations, always leading from the heart and making a difference in our community. Also, a quick shout out to PGM, who is sponsoring this episode, who is also a B Corp, one of only a few thousand in the world. Sounds like a few thousand is a lot, but really, of the 10,000 or plus businesses that are in the state of Illinois, only 43 are B Corps. So a few thousand in the world, not that many. We're very proud to be part of that organization. And I'm very happy to have with me today my guest, Adam Russo. Adam is a social worker by training. He also founded, scaled, and sold his outpatient behavioral health firm, Edgewood Clinical Services. Now, he was on the Inc. 5000 list twice, and he is not too big for us to be here today. So, Adam, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Awesome to have you here. Why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, as you said, I'm a social worker by training. Founded Edgewood Clinical Services back in 2004, give or take. Scaled it over the course of about 15 years. Sold it, worked for the group that bought us for a few years, and now doing business coaching and leadership development with many small business leaders here in Illinois, as well as not-for-profit organizations and anyone else looking for leadership development.
Wow. So there's a story there. I've known you for a while, actually, so I know there's a story there. Why don't you give our listeners a little taste of what's been going on in your life the last 10 years?
Yeah, sure. So I founded Edgewood Clinical Services, by the nature of just doing good work and being embedded in the community. We were able to scale the business quite a bit. Had the help of a coach of my own during that period of time. As we were growing at such a fast pace, it was, with someone without a business background at the time, it's hard to figure out, well, what do you do? How do you scale? What's the next step? And so I just really kind of started wrapping my head around, how do I conceptualize this into a large organization that can work? And that's what we did. So we scaled to about 140 employees over the course of about 15 years.
Did you say 140?
Yes.
140. Nice. Look at that.
140. Yeah. And then during that period of time, just kept building the organization out and eventually decided to sell it and actually closed right at the beginning of COVID. So it's interesting in the sense that healthcare at the time was shifting quite a bit, and so decided to sell and was able to sell then. Mainly, a big reason to that was because I wanted to try to do some things that I wouldn't have a chance to do, and I did get that opportunity after I sold by working as a regional vice president for the group that bought us. And so as a regional VP of operations, overseeing 4 states, about 1,000 providers, and did about a dozen acquisitions and integrations during that period of time. It was really fascinating. Being a part of some of the diligence work, some of the integration work, really interesting meeting different people and how do you bring these different organizations together under one roof? It's quite a bit. And then during that period of time, the group that bought us went public, so that was a big transition too. And then it was, things change when an organization goes public. It's probably the best way to put it. Just as far as the need to kind of hit more revenue targets, things like that, becomes much more of a focus, obviously, for shareholders. And it was just something that, I've been passionate about small business for a long time. I mean, as you know, I was on the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce board and board chair through the 2010s, basically. So I've always been involved with small business and not-for-profits. And so said, I've done this. I know what this is all like, is from a founding, scaling, high growth, management perspective with people and process and strategy. Why don't I help other, businesses and organizations do the same thing? And so, earlier this year, that was the jump I decided to make, and it's been a wonderful transition so far.
Kind of like the next chapter, right? And helping people, these people in businesses. There's kind of no greater joy, I think, to impart your wisdom and experience onto those others. So that's a great next step. We were talking earlier. I don't have this problem in my business, but there's people out there that I guess don't want to work very hard, leaders, business owners, but want to get that quick payout. And they see people like you who've done that, and you were an overnight success, 20 years in the making. So
yeah, well, it's the owners. The owners are fine with it. It's them trying to find the right people. That's what the struggle is. And what I hear so much about is, and I'm hearing from a number of different clients have been, they want to be able to, find people, but they're like, gosh, like I want to hire somebody, but they don't want to put the energy and effort in that I really need. And on top of that, they're looking to get paid at such a high level in market. Like I can't even, how do I even reconcile the value? Because it's not even the money per se that someone wants to earn. It's what's the value that organization is getting from those dollars. And when they look at somebody who doesn't really want to put in the, kind of quote unquote work very hard, it's really frustrating for the owners or leaders of those businesses. And so one of the things that's come up, I think, a couple of times as I talk about this with clients has been, what does work very hard mean? Right. And, because for some people, it's about just sheer number of hours that someone's willing to put in. Sometimes it's about, are they working efficiently? For some, are they thinking critically? What kind of goes into the working hard means something to different organizations. And so, but the sentiment kind of comes into one, lump ball of, work hard. Right. But I think the work hard tends to depend on what the organization needs and is it aligned? And there's a point of frustration that comes up quite a bit.
Yeah. I think in my own business, work hard means efficiency, build efficiencies, right? If you're not efficient now, be efficient in 6 months. That would be one. Have some autonomy, I guess, would be another thing. And we've kind of adapted. Maybe I like your opinion on this. I don't know. Since it's free advice at this point because we're on a podcast. But we have flex time, and I don't measure the number of hours somebody works. I mean, I measure it in terms of, are we getting the proper billable hours, and are we able to sustain it? So yes, but are they working hard enough? That's not my measure. Because if they're meeting their deliverables and their deadlines, whether it's a slow week or a super busy week and they have to work 60 hours, as long as they're meeting their deadlines, they're working sufficiently.
Yeah, and that works it's a perfect example of what's a great setup for and definition for your business, right? Like, what you're trying to measure, you measure it, and all the other stuff doesn't really matter, right? So,
validation. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, there's no right or wrong to it, but businesses have to be able to define, and organizations have to be able to define, what does working hard mean? What is that value for dollar that matters? And it can even depend from position to position. It doesn't have to be, just, one size fits all approach either. So, really understanding what that working hard means. And I think, and as far as leaders of organizations go, the frustration comes from, again, the dollars getting paid out. Like, gosh, this is a lot of money. Like, how am I, I'm paying this person to do X, Y, or Z, am I getting the value? And, and over the past couple of years, especially, it's been more and more of a struggle. I mean, I think I think, you'd be blind not to experience the inflation that we've all seen and the costs. And, and I don't know if and I think the frustration has kind of always been there, I think, for owners and leaders about, people in an organization not putting in the energy that they would like to see, mainly because it's not reflective of their own energy. So I think there's always been that element of frustration. But the compensation part of it has really started to take hold, I think, over the past, seems like 12, 18 months. And I do think a lot of that does come from inflation too. I was reading something yesterday that said from January of 21 to now, I think I saw it was on CBS. It said something, it costs the average person or average family like an extra $11,000, $12,000 a year to cover the basics that they would have covered, that they would have had, previous to January of 21. So you're talking about, there's a lot more money that people have to spend in order to cover their essentials. And that's coming from them saying, well, I just want more money. And that's where I think there's a lot of pushback from leaders saying, hold on, like, I don't know if there's a value in this because you're not working so hard. But there's a real disconnect, I think, that's happening because, I think, employees and teams need to really have an understanding of what working hard means. And organizations have to understand really what the real impact is to their teams from a financial perspective. Not that they don't understand necessarily. Sometimes they can't even do anything about it, but there's a bridge in there that I think is going to have to get crossed somewhere along the way.
There's consequences too, right? Because I think if you're paying them pre-2021, what you think the value should be, do you find that the workforce becomes more transient because they're looking for more?
Well, absolutely. I mean, because, if you think about it, I'll think about it just from my own experience from when, for my team of, I'll look at it from my administrative staff perspective, not my clinical, but the administrative staff perspective, pre-2020, let's say, or 2020 and before, and then relative to let's say 2021 and beyond. What you had, for argument's sake, you can have a front desk type position, right? That might have been call it a $15 to $18 an hour position, right? And you might have had people who have been there for, a couple of years, right? And they were, and everyone's fine. Then you have this inflation and everything start taking hold. Now, in order to hire for that position, you've got to go from a 15 to 18. Now it's becoming a, $20 to $23 an hour position. So then what happens is you have to hire people, brand new people at that new range, and everyone's talking about what they make. So now you have, someone who's new at let's say 22 an hour talking to someone at 16 an hour who's doing the same job, same everything. And the person at 16 might have been there for 2 years. So now the person at 16, and so now the person at 16 says, "Hey, I want to raise." Well, the short and the hard part is, it's short-sighted as an organization to say we're not giving it, because then they're going to leave, go get another job, and then you're going to have to backfill it at 22 anyway.
Right.
So you're and then you have to train and do all these things, especially if they're a good employee.
It costs a lot more. Yeah.
It does. And so thinking through, how do organizations adjust to this it's hard too, because, the reality is, depending on your organization, like, for example, if you're a not-for-profit, you might have a fixed budget, you might have fixed revenues coming in, and there might not be as much discretionary room for some of these increases. So it's a real challenge for organizations.
It is. Yes. I know last year we raised our rates for the first time in 17 years, and we got a little bit of pushback. And because it was a great argument. The great argument was like, well, this is going up. Our other vendors are going up. Now you're going up. It's like, well, yeah, because everything on our end is going up.
All the reasons you just said.
We just lost, whatever it was. I think we lost like 9%, almost 10%. And raising our rates had to cover that. So, and that's not even including, the fact that you have to give annual increases just to keep up with inflation, aside from raises. So it is a challenge, and I'm not sure how that's solved, because it's sort of like it keeps stepping up, and where do you, anytime you try to cut it off, you're kind of spiting yourself. Like you said, you say no to the person that wants 22, but now you have to backfill it with somebody with 22 anyway and train them.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, and definitely a challenge for leaders.
It is. And that's where too, I think, most people though at any workplace they'll sacrifice, even if things are hard, even with the economic situation, people will sacrifice a couple of $1,000s a year if the environment that they work in is a good one. And so it's because it's not just about money. It is about the work environment. And if leaders on the flip side can be just as invested in that, you could be, you can create a culture that you might be able to save some dollars on payroll expenses, because you have a culture where people don't want to go because they recognize the grass isn't always greener, and that creates a value in and of itself for retention. So
culture and perks.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think even perks to a lesser, I really think it's the culture. I mean, do people want to, that great quote of, about culture is, workplace culture is the feeling you get on Sunday night. That's the,
okay.
That's the idea, right? If people get anxious and uncomfortable and dread going to work on Monday, like maybe it says something about your culture, but versus if people are energized and excited to go, what does that say? So that's what to me, what's really important, and that I do believe drives quite a bit of retention, almost even more so than dollars, to some extent.
So what you're saying is business leaders should have a party every Monday morning. Something to look forward to. A little company party. At least there's that, for Sunday night jitters.
Yeah, right.
Well, all right. So when you talk about people who don't want to work very hard and want to get paid, I think we've kind of covered that ad nauseum, and it's a challenge. There's not a lot of solutions to that, but culture is certainly a good answer to that. And I've never heard that before about the Sunday night. How do you feel on a Sunday night? But that's a great analogy. A lot of businesses want to grow, but they're not thinking about how their operations may help or hinder them in getting to their goals. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so it kind of goes along the lines of the work hard piece, right? So a lot of times people, owners and leaders want to be able to, they might expect certain things of their people, but it depends on who your people are and what they can give. And so, in general, organizationally, there has to be operations and process that are aligning with strategic goals. And and what happens is, what I've seen are a few things, right? Either you can be, if you're a small business, most owners just kind of know what to do, and so they just do it. And then they bring people on, and they're like, "Why can't they figure this out?" And it's like, well, you might need a process, like you might need to be trained, and you might have to have a process so that like they can follow what to do. And that's part of the training thing. They can't just know it like you do. You've been doing this for however long. It doesn't work that way, And then conversely, if it's a larger or more established business or a not-for-profit, they might not have reviewed their processes in 5+ years. And the things that are they have these binders lying around that outline all their SOPs, but they don't even come close to applying what's happening today, because maybe there's a total new record system and your process reflects the old record system. No one ever updated them. So and processes are important because number one, they should be reflecting what the goals of the organizations are, and that's an opportunity to review any inefficiencies that might exist, or negative experiences that might exist, whether it's for your clients or for your employees. If there's pain points that exist in the process, I do think it's incumbent on leaders to figure out where do those pain points happen and who are they hurting, right? Because if they're hurting your clients or your staff, you want to do as much as you can to mitigate that. Now, sometimes there's necessary evils in a process, but that's why it's so important to stay up to date with them and keep them written down, because going back to with such potential for high turnover, especially given how people might be looking for more dollars, you have to have a manual or something to help guide people through their roles, and having processes and steps down that people can follow can be really helpful in that.
Sure. Everything from onboarding to what your first week looks like to the duties of your job, the duties of the organization, so they have a more holistic view, et cetera. Yeah. When you said you might need processes, if it reminded me of that comedian, you might be a redneck if there could be a book idea in that, you might need a process if, and then just come up with a list of bullet points.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
because it's funny how many people don't think that they need one. They just think, well, I just know it, or it's just common sense. Like, common sense is not a process. You really got to be able to follow these things out. And that's one of the things we learned kind of the hard way as we grew my practice of, as you grow or as things change, you get different people, you have different tools, you have more people, these things don't just stay together. It changes, it's fluid, it's constant, and trying to be able to hammer out what are the big, the real kind of, the value processes that have to be correct, and then making sure that they can be replicated by anybody is it just really helps make businesses work a lot better, and for them, for their teams, and for their clients.
Yeah, and it's not easy to do, but once you do it, and I know we have an SOP document that's, I don't know how many hundreds of pages long, but I keep going back to it because it's a living document, because software changes, a new version comes out, and the old process is no longer relevant. So it's a task to every week go look at that and revise it.
It is, and
it gets it out of your head and into a replicable process.
It does. And I think, and people have to know whether or not they're wired to do it. I know the value of process. I'm the last person who should be writing a process, because I used to get yelled at trying to write a process. People would say, just give it to me, because I would be like, well, yeah, but the rest of it is, people can figure that out. No. Like, my mind doesn't work in that way. And so people's minds work in different ways, and playing to one's strengths is incredibly important. So, like, if there's people on a team that do think in this very detailed, linear way that can kind of really highlight a process. They should be the ones kind of in charge of writing it. Not someone like me who tends to be a little bit more, let's call it, loose on the details. So it becomes
Try to get through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Wow. So we've covered that, the challenge of people wanting the quick buck and not necessarily putting in the sweat equity. And we've covered people who want to grow their operations, but not necessarily having their process align with their goals. Right. So, and then the third point I think you wanted to make is, a lot of businesses, I think, focus on revenue goals. And I know we did it for the longest time, but you have something to say about that as far as focusing on revenue.
Yeah, I do. I've always believed, in the course, even the years we made the Inc. 5000 list, the goal was never revenue. The goal was never revenue growth. While we certainly, did our budgets and projected for certain things, it was more, revenue is only a reflection of your current system, process, and your people and your strategy. And that's all it's reflecting back. So you can come back and say, I have a revenue goal of X, but the reality is there's a whole bunch of other things that are going to drive that revenue. It's not like you have to just go out and look under more trees to find the revenue. It's not like you didn't look, you didn't go to enough money trees the previous year, so you have to go to more this year. It's about understanding the drivers of it. And so, so for me, it was always about, I had my business. There were some very key drivers that I just knew to follow, and I created systems around it so that I can stay as on top of that as possible. One of the things that always frustrated me, because I was so intent on the revenue drivers, was, people at the end of a month, people, doesn't matter what organization you're in, for profit, not for profit, people typically review their numbers, right? So, month ends, let's call it, June ends. And so now it's beginning of July, and people are reviewing June numbers, and they're seeing the things that went wrong. And they're looking at it maybe compared to a past other couple of months, and they're recognizing, we got to make a change. And so then what happens is, so you look at what happened in June, then, they're talking about it in July. So they implement it in August to hopefully see the change in September. And that would drive me crazy, because you're basically losing 2 months. And my thing was always, why are we doing this? We know it's a revenue driver. Why are we waiting 2 months to do it? And so we were able to put together some systems that I was allowed to see in the future. And we put together processes that aligned so that our process made it so that I could see in the future, because it took a lot of other people to be a part of changing what they did in order to be able to do that. And so I would know if we were, a week into a month, if I knew from what I saw that it was not going to project to that driver or number, whatever driver it wasn't going to project to where we wanted it to be, we would make those changes in real time, so that by the end of the month, we can get as close to or beat what that target was, not wait however long as we needed to, because it was drivers of revenue that were so important. One of the things I was telling you earlier, my oldest daughter now she's a freshman up at Marquette, and she never thought she'd like college basketball. Now she totally loves it. And so when we were home, she was home over Thanksgiving, and we were watching staying up late watching the Maui Invitational tournament. And one of the things that really jumped out at me was they had said the Marquette coach, Shaka Smart, they have a whiteboard on the sideline, and they track in the middle of the game how many deflections the team has on defense. And the goal is to have 30 deflections per game. And I thought that was fascinating and a great illustration of driver, right? Because for this team, what that tells me is that in order for this team to do well, he wants them to be active on defense. And if they're getting deflections, they're getting 30 deflections, it's saying that they're being active on defense, which in my mind says if they're active on defense and they're doing what they need to do, it should drive points, which should drive wins, right? It's a driver. And because they track steals in basketball, but deflections even goes that level below as a driver. And so to me, that's like an example of how you can use it in anything, about how do you find that driver to what's going to generate the revenue, and how do you really use it so that within an organization you can really kind of harness it and use it so that everyone gets behind it, because if they're doing it, it should translate to where you want it.
Sure.
That was a long-winded response to.
Well, I love the analogy, and you're basically taking a step back and going a few levels deeper or higher, depending on how you want to look at it, and saying, what are the drivers to shooting a basket, or what are the drivers to your revenue? And it's not just, sales. Let's go a step back. Where's your funnel, and where's the beginning of the funnel, and what's that driver look like? If it's referrals, I've always said this, referrals are a great testament to your work, but it's the absolute slowest way to grow a business because you're sitting there waiting for the phone. Phone is my time in today's day and age. It's a text or email.
If you're using your rotary dial over there, I see.
Yeah. Well, the phone is the least used app on a mobile device, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, I would say you've said it all, but I think we've just kind of scratched the surface here. So I think we need to have you on again, maybe, and talk a little bit more about some of these things, some of these nuggets of wisdom that you've gained over. I think 5,000 twice is no small feat, first of all, right?
Yeah.
Growing to 140 people, that has its own challenges in operations and in processes and all of that. And I can't even, we're such a small firm ourselves. I can't imagine 140. I'd like to imagine it, but it would be a completely different organization. I would be in a completely different role for that to look like that. So I want to thank you for coming out. Is there any other maybe pearls of wisdom for leaders out there that you want to leave them with?
No, I mean, I think, for me, it's always the, most people whether I work with or people I meet with, the question that always comes up is I want to try to accomplish, X, but I just don't know how to do it. Or I just, I'm lost. I'm not quite sure, how to think it through. And those are people that I work with, across industries, again, the for-profit, non-for-profit world, whether it's trying to put teams together or, there's, just trying to figure out how do I kind of harness this kind of nebulous concept or struggle that I'm having and put it into practice with some clear goals. And so that's what I do. And I don't know if now's a good time if I should give my website out or if that's something.
Yeah, let's plug it.
Okay. Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, reliablecoachingandstrategy.com. I keep some video clips on there too. If people want to, look up some different kind of topics.
Of video clips there. Yeah. It's a great wealth of information, and we'll be sure to make sure we have all your contact information and your website and some of those video clips on our landing page as well.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. But it's a struggle, and but I think but to be purposeful about people, process, strategy for any organization can help you kind of overcome it.
Yeah, and I think what I got out of this is that hiring new people or coming up with operation plan or processes is not just kind of willy-nilly. It's where's the value, and is there ROI in it, and is there a purpose behind it, and is it aligned with goals and processes? And I think that alignment piece is what a lot of is oftentimes missing.
It is. And, one of the examples I give quite a bit to clients, and they've all agreed with it, is that, if you think about like those old school wooden ships, like Pirates of the Caribbean kind of things, right? And if you think about those old school ships, right, it takes a lot of people to manage the sails and, do all the work, right? But if that's a business and you don't have a map to tell you where you're going, and you don't have a leader to stay at the wheel to drive you confidently there, what you have is a lot of people working really hard on a ship that's moving, but no one totally knows where it's going. And so, you've got to be, if we're so focused on efficiencies, well, we have to be efficient in our business too, in our strategic planning, and say, all right, where are we trying to go? How do we align the people to work so that they're working on the ship, that they can do it, that they'll be more effective because the person at the helm knows where they're going. And if you can put it all together, you can create a business that, or an organization that's really moving effectively.
A coordinated effort, including the leadership.
Yep, exactly. It doesn't work without them. Yep.
Well, Adam, thanks again. I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of pearls of wisdom here for our listeners to glean from. So thank you so much. And until next time, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Matters podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.